and agreed that when it comes to the issue of human rights, particularly basic, and the beauty about our Constitution, 2010, is so strong on the issue of basic rights. That's why I saw somebody when we went to church with Masongo Eugene and the other friends there. A gentleman walked inside there carrying a poster. And he said, hawkers' rights are also human rights.
Correct.
Why shoot a dead and hawker? Why shoot him? All right? We pray, still continue to pray for Kamau, that God will have mercy on that young man and the family. I listened to the cries of his mother, distraught. They are not able to talk to him. And so we want to plead that and thank the hospital, Kenyatta National Hospital, for trying to help him, carrying out 2 operations. But rights. Even under Article 43, by the way, we are all socialized to Article 37, even what IG is able to quote, the right to peaceably and unarmed to demonstrate. You cannot change that. So Article 43, on those other human rights, social rights, very, very important. Therefore, goons who came in carrying, of course they were paid, 1,000 shillings. We have seen them confessing. Thank you to the media. Thanks for the media really highlighting this, that they are saying, oh, we didn't know. It is a very shameful thing. And what will go down in history is William Ruto's administration, afraid of its own citizen, went and bribed others because they're unemployed, paid them some money to go and beat their fellow citizens. It is like this massive bribery they are calling economic empowerment. They go carrying 3 million shillings from William Ruto, 2 million shillings from Kindiki, and then after that they take the same money and they go to the next station, they do the same thing. Whom are you trying to deceive? So people are ready for that money. As Rigiji likes to say, kulia hapo, don't even take it home. All right?
Yeah, last question.
Empowerment. So they call it empowerment. Kenyans are beyond that. So I think that our Gen Zs and others are able to see that the millennials, Zenzote are able to tell these people, stop the jokes. These are serious jokes.
And I think just before we leave the issue of goons, I think what we want to ask William Ruto, you cannot take our police over 12,000 kilometers away to deal with goons, gangs of Haiti. Then you are back home, you actually sponsor goons against your own citizens. And you let your police walk with these goons on the streets of the capital of our country. Now, who is fooling who? I think we want to tell him that, you are riding on the back of a tiger. Once you create these goons, no one is capable of controlling them. That's why Haiti is where it is today. Failed leadership that allowed goons on the streets to take the law into their own hands. It is like planting the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. If you plant the wind of goonism, Bwana Ruto, Bwana Sakaja, you are going to reap the whirlwind of anarchy. That is where Haiti is today. We are not ready to let our country go down that road. Thank you very much.
Last question from me, Your Excellency, is what we saw last year, what took the people to the streets, what Kavuli here went through, abductions, is still happening even as late as last evening. Gentlemen abducted in Mombasa, a gentleman picked from Kino, others here in Nairobi and Kitengela. Yet this is the very thing that is making Kenyans angry. They will try to style it as arrest. So far we do not know where those gentlemen are, so we cannot call it an arrest. They were not informed why they were being picked. What would you say of this government or the police or doing the same things the same way? People complain of abductions. It's happening even today.
You see, it's a very wicked approach, trying to circumvent what the Constitution has laid bare, as I tried to explain earlier. Because they realize the only avenue available to them is a very primitive approach by abducting your citizens without a warrant of arrest, without anything legal. And we continue to call them out. They will be caught up with by the long arm of the law. You cannot escape it. They will be accountable. So, because for me, 25th of June will now become the Youth Transparency Day, the Youth Governance Day, and this is it. So if they continue these abductions, because one young man, for example, just sends a post, all right, then they're afraid. They're afraid. They're so afraid that they have to escape from the city. It's so amazing, so amazing. So we continue to call out on abductions, and as I said, the People's Restorative Justice Commission will hear all these cases of continuing abductions, and we'll continue to say no to it. And where occasion demands, we'll go to court. We even talked about state capture, because Kenyans will still want to know about ile mbolea duni, mbolea gush, all right? They want to know. Those are issues of trying to mess up with the economy, the Gupta type of style in South Africa, yeah, and the Andani dues. We want to know, by the way, who was paid what for that JKIA matter. And of course it was withdrawn. We know they're angry about the fact we forced them to withdraw because of our sense of nationality and making this country proud. We will not allow this. So maybe people thought opposition is weak. Now bado hawajaona anything. We'll deal with it. Thank you.
So I think we shall proceed, and
presidency used to be a symbol of national unity until a disaster happened.
Those are opposition leaders led by WEPA leader Kalonzo Musyoka and DAP-K leader Ojiro as they...
Of course, coming into that conversation at now 17 minutes after 9 o'clock. Of course, today is a different day, as we said from the beginning, just looking at what could happen and who said what already, and then intertwining these around conversations that concern, so what would be the next steps? And the conversation has been largely around the fact that, you know, here we are saying, let's talk. But why are folks saying we're going back to the street today? Because the conversation has not taken a position in which people feel then it's all right to talk. That there are directions in which we say this is the way in which we must go now, because previously we've tried to talk in a different manner, but that has not worked. So let's go back to the streets today and remember those who are fallen. And we continue with that conversation today because, you know what, last year was monumental in terms of this shift. And joining us for this hour's conversation is the President Emeritus of Students of Riara University, that's Weslay Masongo. And joining us soon will be Fredrick Ojiro, who is a Rapid Response Officer with Vocal Africa. But for now, Weslay is here. Weslay, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Karibu sana.
Sante. A little bit angered, but it's fine.
Angered?
Yeah, we are very angry.
Well, let's start off with that then, shall we? Because, I mean, if something ought to be done about that, wouldn't you say? What is causing this anger?
I think we are angry because of a lot of lives that have been lost. We are angry because now the protests are becoming commemorations, we are now celebrating lives that have been lost in the street. But while the first time we went out, we did not go out because of police brutality. So it seems that our protests are not only ending the crimes and because of which we went to protest, but are also exposing now deep-seated problems within this Kenya Kwanza regime. So that is why a lot of Gen Z young people are angry. That is why a lot of people are already in the streets.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but you were right there in the center of all of this last year.
Yes.
During the protests, you literally in the middle of Parliament. And what was the message then? And has that message changed till today?
The message then was very simple. Finance bill, reject finance bill. William Ruto must go. We want technocracy within the cabinet. But right now, as we speak, we even now have greatest incompetencies within the cabinet itself. Ministers of education who cannot tell you what the new funding model actually is for. Every day you wake up, there is struggles within the university systems. You have ministers of education who don't even know, or rather of health. I am on record saying that the Minister of Health does not really have a clue of what's happening in Ministry of Health. A lot of Kenyans are suffering. They have long life diseases. They are not getting the treatment that they deserve. They're not getting the medicine on time. So there's a lot of incompetencies that will go on and go on. I'm a student of international relations and diplomacy. Right now, it is not even a mandate that you must be a graduate of international relations for you to be able to understand what is happening within the international space. We just get people who are political aligned with the president, and we give them dockets. They end up messing our international relations, or rather our international stand and scope within the region.
I mean, those pictures we are seeing right now on the screen, you're looking at the images of what began as a cry against punitive taxes,
yes, against
impunity, and a lot of other issues led to the country's deadliest protest wave in decades, and over 60. And today, we still don't have a single officer who's been held to account. A year later, we are still talking about promises. And I feel your anger. My question is, because we've just come back to back on this same conversation, and Reverend Tom has just left, we were looking at the evolution then of how these protests need to evolve. My question is, a year ago, Gen Z protesters were labeled leaderless, tribeless, but loud. How has the student, the youth movement, and the Gen Z matured in structure and messaging since then?
Well, I'll start maybe by tackling that question heads on. How has the messaging and the organization of the youth and the university students been evolving to what we have right now? You see, when you have a lot of unrest, we're coming from a past whereby if you are the person leading the protest, then you are labeled, targeted, and even executed in non-judicial, extrajudicial ways. So the aspect of leaderless was not to dismiss the whole concept of we need leadership in society. It was a tactical approach that would make it difficult for these rogue police to actually target the leaders or the main organizers of the protest then. But now what we failed as Gen Z to do was to transition from the leaderless, you see, force, because when you don't have a leader, then you cannot. You see, the Raila Mandamano, which had one single point of failure. If Raila Amolo Odinga go to the table and got a deal for himself, then the protest dies. Being leaderless meant that even if cell A is bought out, cell B will still go out and continue to emancipate until the goals and the targets that we had been achieved. But we failed to transition. When President dismissed cabinet, refused the finance bill, that was now the point at which the revolution should have evolved and fronted names of people who we think are competent enough to take up on those positions. But the moment that failed, and then the Gen Z started saying, if you are negotiating with government, then you are a sellout, where we don't want conversation. You see, that demand, that urge to continue with the chaos and the adrenaline activities, now that's where we fail. But 1 year later, right now, I think we are more looking at it objectively. Yes, we have a lot of demands, including Ruto must go, but these demands have to be actioned from one step to another. But right now, the protests that are going out there is the commemoration of the life that we lost. So if that objective is achieved today, then we will consider the protest as a success.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, a picture does paint, it says 1,000 words, isn't it? And look at those pictures that we're seeing right now. If we split, there's the split screen that we're getting from KTN. It's the Nairobi CBD. And there are the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa and Enoch Wambua, who are carrying wreaths and walking in the city to go and place them. So it gives testament to what you are saying now about, you know, memorializing those who lost their lives over time, and those who lost their lives since 2022 taken into consideration. And they're not being harassed in any way. So if the day goes in this manner and continues in this form, should we have a problem?
No, we shouldn't. You see, the bottom line is we love our country. And that's what politicians are already gaslighting us, telling us young people do not love their country, they are out there to cause chaos. No, we love this country very much, and that is why we will do everything possible to make sure that the country does not go to the dogs. So if the protest ends that way, and we are peacefully allowed to commemorate those who lost their lives in last year's protest and all protests beginning 2022, then the next natural step would be to look at and get into deals of compensation of the families that lost their loved ones. We know we can't bring them back, but we must be able to compensate them because their parents made investment in them and they had a clear future outlined for them in order to take over a few things in society. So our next step then would be to demand now for the clear accountability of their lives, who killed them and what has happened to them up to this time. And the third would be to get their families to be compensated for their loss.
Fredrick Ojiro is a rapid response officer with Vocal Africa, and he joins us at this point as well, after having spoke yesterday. And we look at what's happening now. And it's just interesting because as you walked in, there's a picture of, we see the huge barricade that is outside Parliament, and it's just cordoned off Parliament. Those, I think it's, it's a meter long, high rather, of the wire that has been used as a barricade, and we see that the wreaths or the flowers are being placed on top of that barricade or in that, and nobody's trying to force their way through that barricade. But that says that this is actually what people want to remember today, that the families want to remember those who then lost their lives in this struggle. Ojiro, Wesley tells us today that, it is to remember those who lost their lives. Is there a further message that we'll probably be seeing through the day today that needs to be remembered or ensconced in this protest, in this march?
Thank you so much. As you've said, my name is Ojiro. I'm the Rapid Response Officer at Vocal Africa. And looking at the intelligence report that we have and our monitors and on the ground, people are coming out in large numbers. People of all walks of life are coming out to commemorate our cadres who were in the front line, who lost their lives defending freedom, demanding accountability, demanding justice, and speaking truth to power. And so today, the truth of the matter is that we are here to come out to encourage Kenyans not to be violent, to encourage Kenyans to come out in large numbers and remember those individuals that gave out their lives, their soul for this country. And what we are doing is to counter the narrative of the politicians that want us to forget and move on. And we are saying that we are not forgetting, those individuals who came out, fought for our democracy, lost their lives. And what we are saying is that also that there is need to call for peace and to do the right things and not to provoke the police. And this is very important, that to them that understand what it means to lose a brother or to lose a son, then the best thing we must do is to ask for police to protect all citizens who are commemorating our cadres, and to ask the police to protect our mothers. Actually, this day is being led by our mothers who lost their sons, our brothers who lost their brothers. And so we are asking everybody to remember them in prayers. Remember these families in prayers. Pray for them. And on this day of commemoration, we ask Kenyans to place flags in spots where these cadres lost their lives, in Parliament, around Parliament, where Rex was killed. Let us place flags there as a way of remembering.
Fredrick, as you're talking about peaceful protests, and you also mentioned the police, the earlier pictures there, now they've gone into 4 splits where we have several coverage on different, I was seeing Central Police Station earlier on, where several protesters have actually gone there. How symbolic is this? Because you have protesters, gathering within the CBD. There are areas that, of course, have been closed. Parliament, as we know, police have put a razor wire to block the entrance along Parliament Road. But you can see tear gas already. Just look at what you're looking on the screens, tear gas lobbed against the protesters who are outside Central Police Station. You're looking at those images. How significant and how symbolic is that?
It is very symbolic because from our history, even in terms of fighting for democracy from the early years, we had got our Kenyans who were leading in the fight of democracy, and they lost their lives in this police station. And even in recent history, we have had police excesses, going on at a very alarming rate. And one of the most immediate case is Albert Ojwang. And so what we are saying is that we are commemorating Kenyans who lost their lives, and it is obvious that they lost their lives in the hands of the police. And so Central Police Station is not very far from what we are talking about. And so Kenyans are going there because this is a very symbolic place. This is a place that, might catch the attention of the world. That if we talk about police accountability, if we talk about end of impunity, then our focus must be here as well. And so I urge Kenyans as well to move in large numbers and, remind Central Police Station and its leadership that we have a new constitution that must be respected, and the police must operate within the confines of the law, because we've seen most police officers who have violated the law claiming of orders from above, and this is an opportunity for Kenyans to move there, because Albert Ojwang lost his life here, and many Kenyans have been violated. Their lives have been, disfranchised in this police station. So there is nothing wrong, there is nothing criminal when Kenyans go to a public institution that has been at the, in the limelight, as being responsible for, various crimes and violations against ordinary Kenyans who are only exercising their fundamental right and freedom. Yeah.
Where do we go from here? And I think that is the question that is on the minds of many people, that where do we go from here? Because, I think there was a time where we cover stories, and one of the phrases that stuck in my mind often was running battles. That running battles just became the order of the day. There was just back and forth without us going in a particular direction. Yes. Now, when there is the attention of the minds of leadership that has been caught in something like this, one must then ask the next question is, so where do we go from here? The day is still young, it's still early, we don't know what the day will bring, but after this, then what, I think is the question. Wesley?
I think I had maybe spoken myself earlier on that first, our first priority is to commemorate the lives of the comrades that was lost in last year and any other protest, at least beginning from 2022. From next, we are going to demand that their families be compensated. After the families are being compensated, then we go now for the police, the rogue police, who have actually perpetrated this crime. If you ask me, the natural way would be to start from those police, including the last guy who shot Boniface on the head unprovoked in the street. So when the police IG comes on a press and says, please, tomorrow protesters do not provoke the police, we also need to tell the police to not to provoke the peaceful protesters. Because how then do you explain why Boniface was shot if selling a mask is categorized as provoking the police, warranting you a bullet in the head? And he had already surrendered. So this is someone who, even in protest in civilized states that are ahead of us in terms of democratic values, they arrest you and they put you in police custody. But again, if you take the person to police custody, he'll die the way Albert Ojwang died. So we have a lot of things that we need to work, because the CS for Interior he's not been appointed yesterday. He's been around for more than 2-3 months right now. And before him, there was a CS of Interior. The regime has not yet changed. And yet, they have wasted over 1 year. They had 1 full year to go and reach out to those families. Have they reached out? Now, they are reaching out right now because there is protest in the street. The same way they did to the father of Albert Ojwang, promising him 2, 3, 4 million. Not information circulating online is that the father has not been given that money up to right now. So no matter how much you think the government will follow through its promises of getting to the families and all of that, the only language that this government understand is pure and brutal force. That is why right now we don't have increases in taxes in the finance bill, not at least in the extent that they were suggesting last year. It's simply because they know about deterrence, that we deterred them. They know that if we do this, then this happens. So the government of Kenya does not even have a docket. Yesterday I was asking someone, why don't we have an act of parliament that is clearly stipulating what we can do and what we cannot do during protest? Then if someone is shot, it has clearly outlined what happens then after that. Because we have, you see, the constitution mentions through, we have protected areas in Kenya. And then there is an act of parliament that is called the Protected Areas Act in Kenya. Mm-hmm. We have Article 37 that says protesters peacefully and unarmed have the right to protest, to petition the government, and to march and express their distress. But there is no act of parliament that is actually now going into depth to tell us what qualifies as peacefully. Because last week when we had protest, we had goons that have been mobilized and they were in cahoot with the government. So if we are telling protesters what to do, then why don't we have acts of parliament that actually explain the conduct and behavior of police during protest, that you cannot shoot someone if they surrender themselves. Simple rules.
But the police have standard operating procedures on how to manage protest. That is already there. And within those confines, in terms of how you can picket, they're naturally very, very clear.
I agree.
The troubling thing is when you're talking about what this government then understands, and that's a point of concern, is brutal force.
Yes.
How do you define then brutal force? If their approach is brutality, and then you're saying their language then needs to be reciprocated, it's brutal force, how will it work?
Well, by brutal force from the protester side, is like today. You see, today, because of this protest, a lot of economic activities have stopped. And eventually the person who takes the toll is the government to some extent, because now that is sort of will deny them some revenue targets for maybe this quarter or something. Now, if the government understands that if we do not allow our citizens, or we do not secure the rights of the citizens will protest, and that will eventually hurt our economy. It will eventually interfere with our own activities and running, and therefore they will have to behave themselves. That is the extent to which I'm referring to as brutal force from the citizens' perspective. But the government, on the other hand, has resulted to fear mongering. It has resulted to abductions and forced disappearances, killing people who are not even protesting. So, to me, those are the issues that we are protesting for and about today. That the police brutality has to end, that the government has to be reasonable when it comes out to how they are managing protesters. Because protests did not start with us, they will not end with this generation.
So, this is the question. Are we looking at a marriage of two things that are happening today in terms of a protest as well as a memorial of those who passed on as a result of last year's protest? Or is it one thing or the other? And I think this needs to be made very clear, because there are folks who are asking questions. Are we talking today about a protest against the things that Kenyans continue to see, or are we combining the two with, number one, a memorial for those who've passed on, the mothers and fathers who are coming to lay wreaths in memory of their children, and then we continuing to say that the things that were brought out in the protest last year continue to be front and center today? Is it a combination of the two?
Yeah, sure. I think you've just answered your own question, because even in the Standard newspaper, it's a luta continua. And what is this? The struggle for justice continues. The struggle for accountability, the push, to end impunity continues. And so what you are saying is that, yes, in the process, we lost our own. We lost cadres. And so we must never forget them, because then the issues have not been dealt with. So what you are saying today is that we are here to commiserate with the mothers and the families, who lost their loved ones. And you are saying that we have to remember them because what they fought for inspires us to continue doing what needs to be done to put this government in check. And so today, yes, we are commemorating those that lost their lives, which is very significant. The day is very significant and symbolic, But also we are saying that the issues that made them lose their lives in the hands of the government have not been dealt with. We still have got joblessness. We still have got police brutality. You've just read from IPOA report that just in the last 2 weeks, more than 20 Kenyans have been killed, and we have seen a rise in police brutality. We are seeing a rise in corruption. We are seeing, the arrogance of the political elite and government leaders. We are seeing, how arrogant leaders like David Ndii are. And these are the things that angered us even last year. And so we are saying that then, if you have a government that cannot listen, then what else are we, left with? That we are left with to come out and engage in other legal mechanisms to make sure that they now are compelled to listen. Because we've been influencing them and imploring to them that can you listen? But they are unable to listen. Then the only option is that then Kenyans have to come out in large number.
And grab their attention in another way?
Yes. They really like... They really like when we protest. I think the government likes and loves when people are protesting.
And maybe
for some reason.
And maybe also our government is reactionary, that they have refused to think and to plan. So the only they're only reactionary to situations for PR purposes. For example, he just mentioned about Ojwang's case, where now the government was quiet. The government lied to the family and lied to the public on the cause of death of Ojwang. When the government was caught pants down, now they were able to be forced to, to apologize. You saw how IG was forced to apologize in parliament. And then now later they come and say that now we'll compensate. Now the question is, if now they are being compelled to compensate Ojwang, how about the other Gen Zs that were killed in 2024? So we're having a government which is not sincere. And so that's what we are saying, that yes, as we commemorate the deaths of our Gen Zs, it is important that we keep the fire burning. It is important that we remain vigilant. It is important that we remain awake. It is important that we point out when the king is naked. And this situation, the king is too naked that we cannot sit back and keep quiet or clap for him. That's why we are saying that in this current dispensation, we have got all the legal backing. We have got all the constitutional provisions that then allow us to do one of these things. If the government will not listen to protests, to picketing, then there are other many avenues. We will have even to sabotage some of the government operations for them to listen.
What does that mean? Because
it means a lot to us. For example, I live in Kibera. I have been experiencing a lot of power shortage. But when you go to the suburb areas where the rich live, do they miss power even a second? Do they? Am I a lesser Kenyan? The rich have got all it takes to take their kids to university and to higher education of learning. How about the poor? The education model is not working for us, for the poor. And so what you are saying is that unless the government brings the question of equity and equality on the table, then it will not be business as usual. That's why we are saying Kenyans are willing to engage to an extra mile for things to be done with clarity. And that's what Thomas Sankara talks about. That certain things, there is need to engage a certain element of madness for certain things to be done with clarity. So if that element of madness is what will move the government to behave,
then we are ready to be mad.
We are ready to engage that element of madness. We are very much ready.
The question here, I can clearly tell, anger is still there from what we had last year. So today is the anniversary. But people are still angry. There is a top-up on what now you're agitating for beyond what was there last year. We were talking about finance bill. This year, right now, we're not necessarily talking about the finance bill. Now the situation has moved to delayed justice, especially the insensitivity to those who lost their loved ones last year. We're looking at putting the police to account. My question then is, for those who will ask, if you're going out to the streets, today is the anniversary, / protests.
Yes.
Because there's still an agitation for all these things to be addressed.
Sure.
How does it then move from the streets to now having something actionable?
Now,
do you have a roadmap for somebody who wants to know? Okay, fine. Once you go to the streets, the day is going to be over. Then what happens next?
I think, and Ojiro will help me. We have the way the Gen Z, we are trying to organize. Reverend was here and he said that the young people have either refused or unwilling to organize themselves into occupying some leadership positions in order to be able to advocate for the change that they want. That message has been really hammered hard, and the Gen Zs, we have divided ourselves into different sections to handle different things. Right now, under the leadership of a few friends, we call them friends, they're not necessarily Gen Z, but the likes of David Maraga, we have a Restorative Justice Commission that has been set up. And their main role of that commission is to now take and do not dismiss Rex Masai, Desmond, Denzel Omondi, Eric Shieni, so that they do not only remain as names, but we need to hear what their story is. What is their family going through right now because of the loss of their loved ones, for the sake of the police brutality and the government inefficiencies and deficiencies in the system right now. So we are looking at the Restorative Justice Committee to be able to hear those cases and prosecute them in their fullness of time. We are looking for compensation for those who lost their lives. And we are looking for for government reforms and government to reform itself so that we do not have the same occurrences in the future. The reason why Rex Masai was killed, Denzel Omondi was killed, Eric Shieni was killed, was so that even if you are a protester tomorrow and you feel you are being brutalized by the government, you can peacefully, unarmed, go to the streets of Nairobi, picket, and go home. Right now, even when most of the Gen Zs are the street, the reality is very simple. Parents, uncles, aunties, and relatives are telling them, please do not go out to protest. So what's the point then of saying the Constitution allows you to protest if by you planning to go out to protest, those who care about you will tell you do not go and protest? It simply means they know that act, that particular part of the Constitution does not apply to this part of the world. And that is exactly what we need to change. So step number 1, Restorative Justice Committee, to be able to hear and document these cases so that they do not remain in name. 2, families are going through very difficult, hard times. Some of these people were breadwinners. Boniface Mwangi, I've said, Boniface was shot. He was selling masks. Do you know why he was selling masks? Because he has someone at home waiting for him, probably saying, Papa or brother is bringing me something. But he was killed. So we need to compensate those families. And point number 3, we now need to go to the core of the problem, why these people are shot, which is the police brutality, and make sure that there is accountability to that extent.
Okay. Also to add is that I think you asked a political question on the current situation and what does the future look like. I think one is to commemorate cadres who lost their lives, the gallant soldiers, and 2 is to continue amplifying the voices of ordinary citizens that have been disfranchised by this situation. But again, 3 now is to move beyond mobilizing into proper organizing of Kenyans around issues that can galvanize them and build a critical mass for change. And what we are saying that part of this process is to then ask ourselves, is we still need reforms in the police? Do we still need to reform the police? I think the police is rotten to the core. And one of the questions that maybe are now within the minds of many young people, that then there's need to even disband, the police service. Just like the Electoral Commission was then disbanded. It's our commission. So there's nothing that stops Kenyans from making that clarion call and rallying around it.
So let's assume from what you're saying,
yes,
because issues keep morphing.
Yes.
From what we had from the protests over the anti-finance bill, morphed into Ruto must go.
Yes.
Now it's the police brutality, the abductions and forced disappearances to one term and all that. And you're saying you're going to move from the protesting now to mobilizing and organizing yourselves in terms of structure. My question is, do you trust each other? Because from what I've read, there is also still among the Gen Z, still around conversations around the movement, is so and so has been bought. So and so has been bought with or without evidence. And so there is that fatigue that you are also fighting each other and fighting one another, and time is going. And where do you get this person that you can trust or this group that you can trust if there is still a trust deficit
from within?
From within,
I think that question has its own natural answer in the sense that the movement is growing organically. And the movement is identifying its own leaders that are doing different things, because you have got horizontal leadership. We have people that are very good in online campaign. There are people that are very good in documentation. There are people that are very good in mobilizing. There are people that are very good in actually disseminating information. And so my thinking is that cartels and agents of death have not only been with our generation. Even during the fight for independence of this country, there were those individuals that lied to be with the masses, yet they were working for the for the colonialists. So their parents have still been giving birth, and you have got young people that have been given birth to people that were part of that problem. And so you also have to understand that there are three categories of young Kenyans. That we have got those young Kenyans that have got that awakening, and they want the real change. And they are willing to go an extra mile to sacrifice, to bring the real change that we all desire. There are those young Kenyans that are agents of the criminal network. We have got the Kasmuel, the Morara, and there are many. And so history will judge them in their own way.
Well,
and there are those that
you've pointed out.
And there are those young Kenyans.
Just hang on. Hang on.
Yes.
Because I'm not really getting the answer.
Yes.
You just mentioned Morara Kipaso.
Yes.
This week he's just said, you know what? I'm taking a break from this thing, from what started off as something that was very legit and genuine.
Yes.
And something was agitating for.
Yes.
There are all these conversations that he's been bought.
Yes.
He's been this. He's not feeling he's getting the support, and he's pouring himself out.
Yes.
And he's not the only one.
Yes.
You've mentioned Kasmuel as well.
Yes.
He moved out.
Yes.
But you still have sort of a vertical leadership, so to speak, that is still organic amongst yourselves.
Yes.
But there is a trust deficit. Wesley, how are you going to trust each other if you're going to form structures when, from what we see and from what we read, is you are...
I think, allow me to add something, that the more we work together and the more we engage on a legitimate cause, those people that are masquerading as one of us, naturally they will just fade out, and the masses will identify them. So people, sellouts will always be there. Even where you work here, there are people that are always operating as sellouts. So the masses and the natural process will just exit them from them, from the main agenda. So my thinking is that let us focus on the main agenda, and as we work together, build our trust, those that are taking advantage of the process will just be exited by the natural cause.
So Wesley, Fredrick is saying it will take its own natural cause, and they'll be weeded out.
They'll fall out.
How are you going to go beyond the trust issues amongst yourselves and say, we're going to trust Wesley, we're going to trust Sophie, we're going to trust Anita, we're going to trust so and so?
I think trust deficit. I love that word. Because last year, the truth of the matter is I got to get a few minutes with the president. And I told him, sir, before even the Gen Z protest, I told him, sir, what you're facing right now is a trust deficit on your government. And if you don't watch it out, it's going to morph itself into people now even questioning the legitimacy of the government in day. So to respond on how I would rather advise the Gen Z we move in terms of restoring the trust and maybe building trust mechanisms in order for us to have leaders that we can trust, and then we can offer them as alternatives for those that we do not trust in the society. I will pick my answer from a very uncommon unrelated field, because of someone who said if you see two things that are completely unrelated, they might converge or start from the same spot. It's called decentralized autonomous organizations. Allow me to teach kidogo.
Continue.
There are things we call decentralized autonomous organization. Decentralized autonomous organization, these are organizations that do not actually need a command structure, that do not actually need to have any trust for them to be able to conduct any transaction or any business. The only thing that they need to have is for everyone to protect what they are interested in. And how this works is this. If we have to perform a specific task, this task is divided into very small chunks that everyone must perform their own role.
To form the bigger picture.
To form the bigger picture,
okay.
in terms of small cells. And even if one cell fails to perform its responsibility, then that does not mean that the whole 90% will not work. Avoiding also one point of failure as a way to be able to make the movement to move forward. So there are philosophical and there are what I like to refer to as theoretical approaches on how we can actually create a solution to the problem that is within the Gen Z. Because the leadership question, even if we like it or we don't, if we don't answer that question in terms of how do we trust these people that we have appointed into office or that are speaking for us, then it's going to be difficult for us to have coherence in what we are speaking and advocating for.
As we wrap up this, because it's important that we do, is the message, is it synonymous across to say that there are certain things which must change?
Correct.
Is that message synonymous?
Yes.
Across board, or are there factions or sects of people within this thing who have a different thinking? Or across board, is it that governance must be better, leadership must improve, the profile of the country for its citizens and the country itself must be raised? Is that the message that is ringing through across everything and everybody?
Yes, we have some very specific objectives that are running across board, and then we have others that I would like to call support or other objectives. For example, the objective of leadership, good governance, and technocracy within the state to be able to perform very good and specific roles. That one is cutting across bar. Point number 2, the protection of human rights. That one we are all agreement on. And the last one that most of us, that led to where we are right now, economic freedoms, economic rights for people to be able to earn a living. That one we have to have. So if the government or the governance structure is sorted out, if we are having human rights being protected as espoused in Article or rather Chapter 4 of the Constitution, and we have economic opportunities and for the Gen Z, then I think most of these other things will be add-ons. So there are things that are cut across, and there are others that are specific and are tailored to specific regions.
Well, we're still looking at pictures that are coming in from the city this morning, and it looks as though the folks who are actually making this march into the city, and from what we've heard, it's dichotomous in nature, whereby we are saying that it's remembering those who lost their lives in this struggle, and that we saw this protest that took place on the 25th of June last year, and then we're saying that still the core is that certain things must change. There must be a different way of governance, and so we're seeing those pictures coming into the city. We'll see what happens as the day goes, but that one thing that we call for continued, that is peace, and that there should be no violence, and that there should be no death for any reason whatsoever. And we take that opportunity to say thank you both to you two gentlemen for joining us in this conversation this morning. It's been good to then be able to get your perspectives as we talk about both of these things. Wesley, as well as Ojiro, thank you for being here today. And we see as the day goes and as the days come into the future. Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.